It was the kind of morning when nothing seemed out of place, when routine wrapped itself around people like a comfortable blanket. The polished marble floors of the most luxurious bank in the city gleamed under the lights. Executives in suits shuffled through their transactions, and the air carried the quiet arrogance of wealth. But no one in that building knew that before the clock struck noon, reputations would crumble, masks would be torn off, and careers would end in a humiliation that could not be undone. The door swung open with a creak that sounded louder than it should have, and with it entered a man who looked like he belonged anywhere but there. Straw hat worn thin by the sun, faded plaid shirt, boots caked with dry soil. He carried no leather briefcase, no shiny watch, no polished shoes. To anyone who saw him, Geraldo Almeida was just another poor old farmer who had lost his way in the marble jungle of the city's financial elite. Yet hidden beneath his modest exterior, he carried a storm powerful enough to tear through everything these people thought they knew about wealth, status, and power. Geraldo walked in slowly, as though he had all the time in the world. His hat shaded a face marked by years of labor, with wrinkles etched deep like the furrows of the land he had worked all his life. His boots echoed on the floor in a way that made heads turn, not because of their shine, but because of their dirt. Women in heels shifted uncomfortably, whispering behind designer handbags. Men in tailored suits adjusted their ties, their eyes narrowing in subtle disapproval. The bank was a temple of prestige, and this man was desecrating it simply by existing inside it. From behind his glass-walled office, Leonardo Campos, the 35-year-old branch manager, observed the scene like a king watching an intruder trespass his throne room. Leonardo prided himself on being a man of success. Graduate from the best private university, a BA abroad, a German car parked outside, and a luxury apartment in the city's most coveted district. His Italian suit clung perfectly to his frame. His English shoes gleamed like mirrors, and every inch of him screamed superiority. To him, the farmer was nothing but an inconvenience, a reminder that not everyone belonged in the golden halls he believed he controlled. Leonardo stepped out of his office, smile plastered on his face, though his eyes betrayed disdain. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, his tone the same he would use with a lost child. Geraldo removed his hat respectfully, revealing gray hair and calm, intelligent eyes. "Yes, young man," Geraldo said, voice steady. "I need to make a transfer from my account." The request was simple, but the silence that followed was thick with disbelief. Carla, the 23-year-old receptionist who admired Leonardo perhaps a little too much, covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. "Of course, sir," Leonardo said, leaning closer with a smirk. "And how much are we talking about?" 15 million, Geraldo replied, his tone unchanged. The bank froze. A woman coughed in shock. A man muttered under his breath. Carla nearly choked on her own saliva. And then came the sound that would ignite the fire, Leonardo's laugh. Loud, condescending, sharp. It echoed through the marble hall like a cool announcement that the show was about to begin. 15 million? Leonardo repeated mockingly, turning to his staff. "Did you hear that, Carla? Our friend here wants to transfer 15 million. If you have that much in your account, I'll pay you double." The mockery was contagious. Carla laughed nervously, others smirked, and even a few clients let out quiet chuckles. Geraldo stood in silence, his expression calm, almost amused, as though he had seen this performance many times before. "Are you sure you didn't mean 15 reais? Or maybe 150? Leonardo pressed, the sarcasm dripping from every word. Geraldo shook his head slowly. "No, young man. 15 million. You can check the account." The statement sliced through the laughter, but Leonardo didn't let it stop him. To him, humiliation was power. He signaled Carla, "Bring me the forms. We'll need the KYC package. declaration of source of funds, income verification, property deeds. All of it? He counted them theatrically as Carla returned with a stack of 17 forms. 17 documents, sir. And of course, transfers above 10 million require 48 hours of prior notice. Security reasons, you understand. The security guard Marcos took a step forward, his posture stiff. If the gentleman doesn't have the paperwork, perhaps he should come back another day. He's causing discomfort to the other clients. The words stung the air. Patricia Montenegro, draped in gold jewelry, rolled her eyes and muttered, "This is why certain clients should stick to cooperatives." Each in their place. Beside her, Dr. Augusto Medeiros, a lawyer with too much self-importance, sighed loudly. Indeed, this is not the environment for that kind of customer. Still, Geraldo didn't flinch. He simply looked at Leonardo, then at the stack of papers. "Tell me," he asked softly, "are these procedures required of every client, or only those who look like me?" The question landed like a hammer. For a moment, Leonardo hesitated, but arrogance was his armor, and he refused to let it crack. "These are standard procedures, sir. If you had regular high-value transactions, you would know that." "Strange," Geraldo murmured, pulling out an old, scratched phone from his pocket. "Because last week I transferred 20 million from this very account. No forms, no notice." The words were a knife. Sandra, the supervisor, leaned over to whisper urgently in Leonardo's ear. "We should check the account history." Leonardo waved her off, but his mask was slipping. Geraldo calmly sat down in a plush VIP chair, crossing his legs like a man who owned the place. And in truth, he did. "Then I'll wait," Geraldo said simply. The bank transformed in that instant. What had begun as a spectacle of ridicule became something else, something that made Leonardo sweat under his suit. The farmer wasn't leaving, wasn't embarrassed, wasn't defeated. He was in control, and everyone could feel it. Sandra returned moments later, pale. "Leonardo," she whispered, panic in her eyes. "His account shows regular transfers, millions, every week." Leonardo froze. "It must be an error. He's just a proxy, not the real account holder." But then Carla, curiosity overtaking arrogance, blurted out the truth. "No, sir. The account is in his name. Geraldo Almeida, premium client, special conditions." Her voice trembled. The words spread through the bank like wildfire. Patricia's golden confidence wavered. Roberto Silva, a wealthy businessman, shifted uncomfortably, and even Dr. Medeiros avoided eye contact. Leonardo's phone rang. He looked down at the screen, and his stomach dropped. "Regional Director," it read. His throat tightened. He answered with a voice suddenly small. "Hello?" "Leonardo," came the stern voice of Ricardo, the regional director. "I just received a call. Someone wants to speak with me directly. A man named Geraldo Almeida. Do you have him there?" "Yes, sir," Leonardo stammered. "Just a farmer causing trouble. Nothing serious." The silence on the line was heavy, suffocating. When Ricardo spoke again, his tone was cold as steel. "Do you know who Geraldo Almeida is?" He's just—" "Shut up, Leonardo. Hand him the phone. And treat him with respect. Do you understand me?" "With the utmost respect." The command echoed through the phone loud enough for those nearby to hear. Leonardo's legs felt like stone as he walked to Geraldo and handed him the phone with trembling hands. "Sir, Mr. Almeida?" "The director wishes to speak with you." Geraldo took the phone casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Hello, Ricardo. How are you, my son?" The words fell like thunder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The farmer was speaking to the director, as if they were equals or worse, as if the director answered to him. "Yes, I'm here at your central branch," Geraldo continued, his calm voice carrying across the silent hall. "I wanted to move some funds, But it seems your employees have invented some new rules. Perhaps we should review these protocols together." As he spoke, eyes widened, whispers turned to silence, and shame burned the faces of those who had mocked him. For the first time, Leonardo realized he had not been humiliating a poor man, he had been humiliating the very owner of the walls around him. Geraldo ended the call, handed the phone back, and pulled out a simple tablet from his pocket. The screen lit up, scratches visible on the protector. With a few taps, he opened official documents, digital powers of attorney, certified shareholding records, and audited statements. He turned the tablet toward Leonardo, whose knees nearly buckled. 43% of the bank, Geraldo said calmly. Acquired over 23 years, the truth crashed down like an avalanche. Patricia's jewelry felt cheap, Roberto's arrogance evaporated, and Dr. Medeiros struggled for air. Carla, who had laughed the loudest, burst into quiet tears. Marcos, the security guard, stepped back, wishing to disappear. And Geraldo, the man they had dismissed, the man they had mocked, stood there in his faded shirt and straw hat, revealing himself not as a poor farmer lost in the temple of wealth, but as the temple's true builder. Leonardo's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The air was so heavy that even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to vanish. Geraldo let the silence linger, letting every second hammer into the guilty conscience of the staff and the haughty clients who moments earlier had laughed at him. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but it carried the weight of truth, of history, of decades of battles fought in silence. "For months," Geraldo began, his eyes sweeping the room, "I have been receiving letters. 847 letters, to be exact. Letters from humble people who walked into agencies like this one and were treated as though they were less than human. Small farmers ignored, retirees humiliated, mothers dismissed. People who trusted us and were betrayed by arrogance. No one moved. Carla sobbed quietly, realizing she had become one of the examples Geraldo spoke of. Sandra stared at the floor, ashamed of her complicity. Patricia shifted nervously in her designer shoes, the weight of her earlier disdain pressing down on her. Dr. Medeiros wiped sweat from his forehead, every ounce of his intellectual superiority gone. "I came today," Geraldo continued, "not as the owner, not as the shareholder, not as the man behind the boardroom doors. I came as myself, as the farmer I have always been, as the man who once carried bricks as a laborer, who once studied by candlelight because there was no electricity. I wanted to see with my own eyes how my people were being treated. And what I found here?" He paused, shaking his head, a shadow of disappointment clouding his eyes. "What I found is that money blinded you, power corrupted you, and respect, the most basic of human decencies, was forgotten." His words cut deeper than any shout could. Leonardo trembled, every fiber of his being screaming to apologize, but he knew it was useless. Geraldo looked directly at him. "You mocked me for being a farmer. You invented rules that did not exist. You tried to push me out, as if I were dirt beneath your shoes. But the truth is, young man, it is the soil you despise that feeds you. And it is men like me who make this institution possible." Leonardo's knees nearly gave out. His career, the polished facade he had built with ruthless arrogance, collapsed in an instant. Geraldo turned his gaze to Roberto Silva, who had smugly suggested that certain clients belonged elsewhere. "You, sir," Geraldo said softly, "confuse wealth with worth. A man who measures himself by the watch on his wrist or the car in his garage is a poor man, no matter his fortune." Roberto lowered his head, his pride shattered. He turned to Patricia. "And you, madam, looked at me and saw trash. But what you truly saw was your own reflection. Jewelry will fade. Titles will be forgotten. But the way you treat people, that remains." Patricia bit her lip, her arrogance dissolving into shame. Finally, Geraldo looked at Dr. Medeiros, the lawyer who had lectured about hierarchy. You, doctor, speak of order and position, but you know nothing of justice. True education does not teach a man to look down on others. It teaches him to raise others up. Dr. Medeiros swallowed hard, suddenly feeling like a schoolboy caught cheating. And then Geraldo shifted his attention back to the staff. Marcos, the guard, who had tried to intimidate him, shrank under his gaze. Young man, strength is not measured by how loudly you bark at the weak. Real strength is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Marcos looked away, ashamed. But then Geraldo's eyes softened as he turned toward Ana Paula, the only one who had spoken up in his defense. And you, my dear, you reminded me today that there is still hope. That kindness has not vanished completely. Never be afraid to stand for what is right, even when you stand alone. Ana Paula's eyes filled with tears, not of shame, but of gratitude. The weight of his words hung in the air. No one dared to move. Geraldo placed his hat back on his head and adjusted it with the ease of a man who had nothing to prove. This bank, he said, was built to serve all. Not just the wealthy, not just the powerful, but every man and woman who trusts us with their savings, their dreams, their lives. And I will not allow that purpose to be lost. Leonardo finally broke, his voice trembling. Mr. Almeida, I didn't know. Please, forgive me. Geraldo looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. Forgiveness is not mine to give. It must come from the people you humiliated, from the dignity you tried to steal. As for your career, that will be decided elsewhere. At that moment, Ricardo, the regional director, stormed into the branch, his face pale. He had driven back as fast as he could after Geraldo's call. When he saw the farmer sitting calmly in the VIP chair, the realization of who held true power hit him like a tidal wave. Mr. Almeida, Ricardo said, bowing his head, I apologize deeply. This should never have happened. No, Ricardo, Geraldo replied evenly. It should not, and it will not again. Because this bank will remember what it was built for, or it will crumble. Ricardo nodded furiously, turning to his staff. From this moment forward, Mr. Almeida's instructions are law. Every client is to be treated with respect. Do you hear me? Every client. Yes, sir, they muttered, their voices small. But Geraldo wasn't finished. He stood, tall and unyielding, despite his simple clothes. He pulled out the transfer slip he had written earlier and handed it to Ricardo. 15 million, he said calmly. Send it now. And make sure it is done the right way, no delays, no excuses. Yes, sir. Immediately. Ricardo rushed to the counter himself, hands shaking, processing the transfer as though his own life depended on it. Within minutes, the transaction was completed. Geraldo glanced at the receipt and slipped it into his shirt pocket as though it was the most ordinary thing in the world. But what followed was far from ordinary. Geraldo turned back to the crowd employees, clients, strangers who had witnessed it all. Remember this moment, he said, his voice carrying through the silence. Because it is not about me. It is about every person you will meet from this day forward. You do not know who they are. You do not know what battles they've fought, what dreams they carry, what power they hold. Judge them, and you may destroy yourself. Respect them, and you may change the world. The words struck every soul in that room like lightning. Some would never forget them. Others would try to bury the shame, but it would haunt them nonetheless. Geraldo placed his hat back firmly, nodded to Ana Paula in silent gratitude, and walked slowly toward the door. No one dared to stop him. No one dared to speak. Even the usual hum of the city outside seemed distant as the door closed behind him. In that silence, the true storm was revealed. Leonardo collapsed into his chair, his career in ruins, his arrogance burned to ashes. Carla wept openly, realizing her laughter had betrayed not just her character, but her future. Patricia stared at her jewelry with disgust, as though it mocked her. Roberto wished desperately to vanish into the crowd. Dr. Medeiros knew his reputation as a man of intellect was gone forever. And Ana Paula, she stood straighter than ever, because she knew that in the darkest moment, she had chosen the right side of history. Outside, Geraldo walked into the sunlight. The city bustled as always, cars honked, people rushed, but he felt none of it. He felt only the quiet satisfaction of a lesson delivered, a truth revealed. He did not need their approval. He did not crave their recognition, for he knew the soil under his boots, the sweat of his brow, the love of his late wife, the sacrifices of his youth. That was where his wealth truly lay. And as he walked away, one thought echoed in the minds of everyone who had seen him. The richest man in the building was the one who looked the poorest. Time would pass, but the story of that morning would not fade. It would spread like wildfire across the city. The farmer who humbled the arrogant, the man who walked into the bank with dirt on his boots and left behind a legacy of dignity. Some would tell it as a cautionary tale, others as an inspiration. But all would remember the name Geraldo Almeida, because true wealth is not measured in millions, nor in suits, nor in applause. True wealth is the power to remain yourself in a world desperate to change you, and to remind others, when they have forgotten, what it means to be human. And so Geraldo disappeared into the crowd, just another man in a straw hat, carrying with him a fortune not of money alone, but of wisdom, humility, and the kind of power no bank could ever contain.